Hey, we made it to episode 2. I'm Carl Franklin, and this is No Excuse for Boredom. I'm here with my really, really good friend who I met when I was probably 12, Randy Judkins from Maine. How are you, sir?
I am better than terrific. So
we met when I was in the Westerly Chorus.
Yeah.
And we did this Christmas pageant every year called Twelfth Night. You know, big English Christmas carols and magic and mirth and jester. And you were a jester.
I was.
Yeah. And so you're like a professional jester. Now, I'm not going to say a clown because you're not. I mean, you're a comedian, you're a writer, you're a motivational speaker. And then you also do magic and you taught math for a long time, right?
I taught for a huge amount of time, 7 months.
Oh, really? Oh,
7.
But one of your characters is based on a math teacher that you had, right? Professor Rhombus?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I loved about you as a kid looking up to you is you just did things so effortlessly. I mean, I guess it's what it must be like when you go out to see a musician or a band or something and somebody plays and you come up to them and you say, how long have you been playing? And they say, oh, I don't know, 20 minutes. Yeah. Like for you, for them, they practice every day and they make it look effortless. And then, so that was the experience that I had. Not only that, but you made me laugh my balls off. So
did you get them replaced?
Yeah, I had to have them replaced. Yeah.
So I always looked at musicians who looked like they were playing effortlessly as also very desirable to watch, and you could tell whether they're fiddling or playing a guitar or playing a horn or on the piano. You just felt the comfort there. Right. And I learned the expression, oh, she is a player, he's a player. And, whether they read charts or not, they play and they understand the language when they're playing either just for themselves, by themselves, or whether they're in a band or in an ensemble. So I take your compliment very, very seriously. I love that it looked effortless. So
yeah, and especially like at 12th Night, because a lot of it was silent. Like you guys didn't say a lot, you and the other jesters. So you would come out and you would just juggle and do things, and the expressions on your face, because you have a rubber face, my friend. I mean, right? You do. You have a very that nobody can see what you're doing. Right?
Oh, okay. They can't see this. All right.
No, but I'll post some pictures and some videos, but in the silence, when people are just like transfixed and just watching something that you're doing and you're not talking, but you're not nervous about it. It's not awkward, right? You're just in the zone.
Yeah. That phrase, you're not nervous. You're right. I don't feel nervous. I never felt nervous unless I had another agenda playing in the background in my head. But for the most part, it was like breathing in front of an audience. Yeah. I always felt like people, when I've heard people say, oh God, how do you do it? You must be so like on edge or nervous up there in front of people. And they
just project.
I always answered, no, I can't. Before the show starts, I can't wait to have it begin. Because I get that, what they call circular response with an audience, and I give them something, they give it back, and you get this relationship going, whether you're juggling, doing magic, playing music, whatever you're doing, silently or with language.
I can only compare what you do to things that I've seen like at Cirque du Soleil. Like it's on that level.
It's nice to be included in that same sentence. They're just a whole level sideways or up or than any other circus out there. So,
but you started with this group in Maine, right? Tell me about how you started and how you got together with the people in Maine that were all like-minded.
Yeah. So I did teach math for almost a full school year and left somewhere in late April. And I wanted to pursue this desire to perform. And it started way back in high school into college. And I kept thinking, I'm so comfortable in front of a class and on stage. I wonder if I can make this work. And so I started performing in small venues, schools, little birthday parties for, not necessarily for kids, but for families. And all of a sudden, small businesses were doing banquets and they needed entertainment. And so I would sit in people's offices, whether they're a school principal or, they ran an entity, a business entity, and I would just show them my pictures and testimonials. And all of a sudden I had another gig. And so this is the way it kept going for about the first 5 years. And it took me about that long to find my style and hone it. And meanwhile, everything was feeling very organic and sequential, and I would pursue other markets. And all of a sudden, I find myself down in Westerly, Rhode Island, doing 12th Night with a cast of over 100 people, with Fred Garbo and then Tom Murphy. And I just thought, wow, this is magic to walk into this and be part of this whole thing. And it really stretched the jesters to come up with something new, a new 10-minute to 12-minute gig every single year, and would literally write it on site in 3 or 4 days.
And, the things that you do, like if you would write on a piece of paper, all the things that you can do, Randy, from throwing playing cards 100, 200 feet. I remember you taught us how to do that to balloon animals, just little things that you would make noise with. I mean, just standing, walking on stilts, juggling up to 7 objects and crazy things like that. List would probably be over 200-300 items long, wouldn't it?
Maybe 40 or 50.
Card tricks. Come on.
Yeah.
How many? You probably know 100 card tricks.
I'm down to about 90 now that I like to do. But, of course, there are 5 or 6 that I always like doing, and they're comfortable. And I remember showing you one at a bar in New London, and when I handed you the deck to repeat the deck, the trick, you saw what happened immediately, and you almost fell off the stool.
I think it was at my house, actually, but you're right. I remember this. So because here's the thing, like, it wasn't a magic trick. It was a gag.
Yeah, it was a gag
on the person that you're doing the
exactly,
trick to. And so, the realization that, this isn't a trick at all. I've been had. I think I peed my pants. I didn't stop laughing for 15 minutes. I was crying.
Yeah. It was so funny.
But that's what it was like watching you guys do, like up at the Oddfellow Theater, watching you do like the Bean Supper in Maine. Like I couldn't be in the audience because I would just be on the floor dying. Yeah. And here's the thing. I know how it goes. I know every line of that bit, and I'm still just dying.
Yeah. Bean Supper was one of them. They call it a laugh every 10 seconds. And, the Buckaroo was another one that we
Buckaroo.
did. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I think I have links to these videos, so I'll put them out there, because we did a show together in Maine at LL Bean, and I did the Clementine bit.
I think that's still out there. It's kind of slow and tedious, in some of the longer routines, but you might be able to get some.
Well, I'll find them on your website. I mean, is it a Maine Hysterical Society?
Yeah, I don't think it's up anymore.
Oh, okay.
I was using
WordPress.
Yeah, WordPress, and the domain expired, and I didn't. Since I backed off big time about 5 years ago when Bree and I ended up going across the country and hauling a trailer for.
I remember seeing.
We sold our house and
great pictures on Facebook.
We went 3.5 years full time.
That's so cool.
What a blast! Yeah, I would. I don't know if I'd do it again, because now I'm in my 70s. So I think that was a nice 5 years, and we're selling the Airstream, and we're moving on to the next chapter. So
okay. So have you sold the Airstream yet? Because I might be interested.
Not yet. It's beautiful. It's just it's a gorgeous trailer. Yeah.
All right. So these guys in Maine all came from different places. Wow. Some from Broadway, some from California, and they ended up there. Where, in Portland, I think
it was in South Paris, and that's where the anchor was a guy named Tony Montanaro.
Yeah.
Kind of was a magnet for performing artists of all kinds, musicians to ventriloquists to mimes, jugglers.
He was a mime, right?
He was a celebrated mime. Studied with Etienne Decroux in Paris along with Marcel Marceau. And he was very instinctive, with the whole art form. Classical mime. He kind of transformed it into a personal style theater using mime techniques, but also stories and incredible ability to connect to audiences. And he performed into his 70s. I think he lived to be 75 years old.
I remember seeing him somewhere. Maybe it was at the Westerly Art Center when I was a kid.
Maybe.
He may have been there, or maybe it was in New York or something. I just remember seeing him. I can recall his face.
Yeah, he's got some really wonderful videos out there too, that are still hanging around. But he was a magic man. He could sell you the socks on your feet. I mean, he was such an amazing inspiration to people who came from, like you said, from all walks of life, Broadway to California to, the movie industry, and people who were just starting as performers, their first year or their 10th year or their 30th year. And he was able to connect with anybody on any topic and get you to come up with your best stuff. And he had an amazing objective eye, and he directed so cleanly and instinctively. So,
and this little town in Maine became world famous, right?
Yep.
For the talent that came out of it.
Yep. Yeah. And there was, Tom Bergeron, who, Dancing with the Stars and Hollywood Squares host and America's Funniest Home Videos. He came out of Haverhill, Massachusetts, and studied with Tony way back in I think the late 70s or early 80s. And, so there are some very famous people who studied with him, and that became part of their background ability to relate to audiences in a big way. So he would take anybody and everybody into a whole different level, and groups were born out of those workshops. One group called the Buckfield Leather and Lather Traveling Variety Show, which became the New England New Vaudeville Review with Benny and Denise Reel as what they call them, the mom and pop team, that subcontracted other performers within the show itself. We had dancers and Jones and Boyce and the Blue Sky Serenaders, who was a trio, Joel Eckhouse and Bob Graves and Linda Pervier.
Boy, I bet the Maniacs didn't know what hit them. They're like, where is all this talent coming from? And
Yeah, you're right. We would do these festivals and appear not only as a solo from me, Randy Judkins, but also these groups, the New England New Vaudeville Review, and we'd do these special events around the state, and people they'd just look at us and go, holy cow, this is so different. This is not stand-up comedy. This is not...
And it's certainly not like backwoods Maine kind of boy makes good, and comes fun. It's like, it's a real group.
Yeah. Very tight.
World-class talent.
It really was. And I'm very fortunate that I've been a part of 3 very, very, very creative and productive groups. The latest was the Maine Hysterical Society.
Yeah.
And Steve Underwood and Barney Martin and
you guys
myself.
Are fantastic.
Oh, geez, I'm telling you, that was from 2001 to about 2013, I think. We were pretty strong and performing
Yeah.
all over the place. Yeah.
All right. So we have to talk about Bert and I.
Okay.
We have to talk about, because this is how I got introduced to Maine humor when I was a kid. My mother had those records, A Maine Pot Hellion and Bert and I. Yeah. And they were just records of people talking and in Maine humor that nobody had outside of Maine, in these guys from Yale who did it. Nobody'd really ever heard of Maine humor before. But
right.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, a guy named Marshall Dodge was amazing, how do you say, mimic of the Maine dialect.
Yeah.
And he studied it, and he had come to Maine as for a long, long time as a young person, and listened very, very intently. And I don't know how he decided to start performing it or designing these special stories with a guy named Robert Bryan.
It is infectious, though.
Yeah.
When you get exposed to it, you start talking like that.
Yeah. So I grew up with a very strong accent, very strong Maine accent from Western Maine, a small town called Mexico, Maine. Right. And so I had relatives that lived on the coast in East Orland, just just north of Bucksport, rather. And Bucksport. Yeah. And they'd come to Mexico, Maine, and it would be a circus because, they were like 6 kids and I was one of 7, and I never slept alone till I got married. So small house, not many bedrooms, no sir. So that whole.
Okay, buckle up, kids, because this is going to be fun.
That whole slow, drawly kind of not Southern drawl,
no,
or
not
Texas
at all.
drawl. It was just this intensive kind of thought, slow motion kind of lingo. Well, I had to shoot my dog the other day.
But was he mad?
Well, I'm telling you, he weren't none too pleased. So, it's almost like take a dad joke and, do you hear about that guy they fired over there at the orange juice factory?
No,
you hear about that?
What happened to him?
Well, he couldn't concentrate.
So it's not just the dumb joke, it's the delivery.
Yeah, it's the timing.
Delivery.
Yeah. And Marshall had a true gift for that timing and the slowness of the delivery. Yeah. And he took his time, and people sometimes were way ahead of him in their minds. They're just way ahead of him.
Right. And that's what makes it funny, because you're waiting for the payoff.
Yeah. And some of them even knew the payoff, but they still laughed because they figured it out. It's like a puzzle. Yeah.
And you can see the pause before they lay the punchline. Then just that pause with the look on their face, like they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then boom.
Yeah, bang. It's kind of like, do you hear about that honeymoon couple that got their window putty mixed up with their Vaseline? Do you hear about that?
No, sir. What happened to them?
Well, their windows fell out. So, along with the punchline, you get this, the listening audience plays with an image.
Right.
And they get to hang out on that image. Oh, their windows fell out. And you can see, you can see their minds kind of chinking along.
Yeah.
And enjoying that image. So, he just had a really wonderful way of doing that, telling stories about lobstermen, telling stories about people on back porches, and
Bob Bryan was from Maine, or were they both from
Robert
New
Bryan?
Haven?
I think they were both from outside of Maine. I think Connecticut and Massachusetts, I believe. Yeah, they kind of met and they hit it off, and they both had some sort of experiences in Maine and knew the culture and knew the lingo.
Were those records well received in Maine from the locals?
Oh man, I had all of them. Yeah. And the guy that introduced me to a guy named Carol Casey, another family in Mexico, Maine that I hung around. They're like a second family to me. Mm-hmm. And so they started listening to him, and I went, well, who is this guy? This is back in the late 60s. And I'm going, wow. So got caught on and went to college and studied for whatever I studied. And I was in theater, and going to a Maine college, you get not only other people from Maine, but you also get people from Southern New England and Midwest. And so they'd hear me speak and I'd drop my R's or add them. And, it wasn't Acadia, it was Arcadia, it was, or idea. I get an idea. Yeah. And so you'd end up getting these strange looks from people from Massachusetts, from Connecticut, from New York. And so, being in theater and singing a lot, in choruses, I kind of lost my accent because you've got to be articulate. You've got to, elocution is everything in theater and singing and articulation. So I kind of played around with it with a bunch of people in college, and then met Marshall Dodge about my second year in the industry of performing, and it kind of was inspiring to me because I shared a bill with him at way down in, I think it was in Buckfield, Maine. He was billed there, and I was on the bill with him, and he did his piece, and I thought, God, I think I'm gonna take this old character that I played around with in college, sunny day, yeah, and and play around with that character because I think I understand the relationship to telling stories and in front of Mainers. So that's kind of how I started that character.
Can you tell the story about the hunting dog?
Oh God. Oh my God.
I saw you do this like on a special. You're like in a rocking chair on a porch.
Rocking chair, yeah. I don't know if I remember it. Something about this guy. Yep, this is my good dog over here. This is Moon. So he's sitting down in the rocking chair, and there's this styrofoam stuffed dog next to him. And he goes, "Yeah, good old Moon. Damn good dog. Yes, sir. Well, I've had Malamutes, I've had St. Bernards, I've had Beagles and Mastiffs and Chihuahuas. I've had them all, but there's nothing that compared to Moon. Yeah. Well, I took him hunting once, and I had him trained for land and water. He was so good, and so a friend of mine." Friend of mine said he took his dog out hunting, and he shot a duck over the small pond, and good old Moon went after him, and as soon as he went in the water, he sunk like a rock. And my friend says, "Well, what happened? I thought he could get any bird out there." And I said, "Well, Moon, come on over here." And I'd seen the problem right away as soon as I looked on his backside. And so I reached down and squeezed his nuts right together, just like this, tight as a drum. And my friend said, "What the hell are you doing?" Anyway, I says, "I'm sorry, I had him set for quail." So, and you say that his ass end just tightened up like a fist, right like that, just like that, right there. And it's all coming back to me, but in pieces. Yeah. And he says, "Well, what happened?" I said, "Well, I got to apologize. I had him set for quail." Yeah. So, yeah, I'd have to review
hysterical.
That one. Yeah, it is. It's a funny joke. Martin Jones wrote that as the playwright for the "You Can't Get There From Here" play.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us more about the Maine Hysterical Society, your entourage group that you work with.
Yeah. It started by me asking an old friend of mine who I hadn't seen for many, many, many years. And he grew up in the same town that I did in Mexico, Maine. And he was a great musician and a wonderful thespian as well. He was in shows that were directed by the same mentor as I had, a guy named Bert DeFries. And so he was 7 years behind me. So I saw him performing, singing covers at a business gig, and I went up to him after the show and I said, "Hey, Barney, look, let's get together. I have an idea about a few things." And so we did, and I said, "I've been watching this guy in Portland, a guy named Steve Underwood, up there at the Good Theater on Munjoy Hill, And he's very prolific. He writes fantastic songs. He's a composer, and it would be great to ask him if he'd like to be part of a trio. And I'm thinking of calling it the Maine Hysterical Society. So it took about, a good 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get everything lined up to ask and have a meeting. And so we committed to that. We committed to writing pieces, musical pieces and comedy sketches that had to do with Maine. And so that was in 2001. And we started performing once we had 45 minutes of material, we started performing. I think it was within 3 months we had that much material.
So am I describing it right? Yeah, it's Maine-based sketch comedy, but also music. You guys do a lot of music.
Yeah, we at least half the show was music.
Yeah.
Titles like Why Do I Have to Live in Caribou, which is way, way up north.
If I Had a Chainsaw, sung to the tune If I Had a Hammer.
Yeah. So the If I Had a Chainsaw was just one of about 10 songs that we learned and performed in the Maine Hysterical Society.
Black Fly to the tune of Blackbird, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Black Fly buzzing around my head at night or something like that.
Yeah, Black Fly buzzing around my head at night. Yeah. and we really loved performing songs about Maine and character sketches about comedy, the comedic side of living in Maine.
Yeah.
And not making fun of people who visited here or who now live here, but just celebrating the fact that we all have this in common. We have this 4 seasons. We have the coast. We have mountains and, black flies and lobsters and,
it's an identity, right? I mean, it's not only the way that you're talking and the phrases and things that you use, the colloquialisms, but also the things, right? If I had a chainsaw, I'd clear out the bramble between the outhouse and the kitchen.
The outhouse and the kitchen.
It'd be wicked.
Yeah.
Wicked good.
And all those colloquialisms found their ways into our songs and sketches.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember teaching down to Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Clown College in 1983, and nobody out of those 58 students who wanted to, run away with the circus, was from Maine. Nobody. And I don't think, maybe there were two Mainers that went down there, possibly 3, during their whole stretch of providing clowns for the greatest show on earth.
Yeah.
And I, I would do this character down there, and people liked it anyway. And I remember performing in Georgia and Texas and North Dakota and Iowa and still using that character, the main character. And I always was fascinated that it worked because I wasn't in Maine anymore. But what it was is this universal, that people translated, my character, Sunny Day, into their own local yokels.
Oh, wow.
And they like this. I remember doing a wellness conference in Georgia on Jekyll Island. And I thought, geez, I don't know if this is going to work. My whole Sunny Day routine, the Down East juggle routine. And it killed. It just killed because I think what they do is they link into the character and they interpret all of his
localisms.
Yeah, colloquialisms. They have their own colloquialisms, and all they had to do was just change a word or change a phrasing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and they would link right into it. Same thing in Texas. I kind of wondered if it would fly, and so were the organizers. They say, "Hey, we saw you at this particular conference. Do you think your main stuff is going to work here?" And I said, "I'm very confident it will," and it always did. They identify with the character.
Yeah,
and the character is what they call a universal. We're always in search of universals that people can relate to.
I think there's also a touch of surrealism too in some of these stories, isn't there? Like, what? How? So I remember this story, and let me see if I can put it into words here, because I certainly don't remember the names, but there's a couple of old timers were sitting out by the general store out in, wherever, somewhere, Maine. And one says to the other, he says, "Boy, this is the hottest day I remember." And the other one says, "Oh, this ain't hot. Well, I remember when Pastor Bob Galloway was taking his horses laden with popcorn across the Piscataqua River Bridge, and it was so hot that corn got to popping, and the horses thought it was snow and froze to death."
That's right. That's good.
Horses.
Well done. Thought it was snow and froze to death.
Yeah, it's just so weird.
Yeah. I love that stuff. I love surprises like that,
right.
It's brilliant stuff. It's brilliant writing. And
sure.
God, it's,
do you have is a quick joke or story, main story coming to mind that you can, lay on us?
I remember being up in residence in a small town called Bingham, Maine, and talk about, real deep-seated Maine. This is a town that had this tiny little diner called Thompson's Diner, and I'd go there every single morning out of those 5 days that I was at that school, at high school, and I'd do my thing and have my breakfast all by myself. But there were these two booths that all the locals, and these were the town fathers, would just sit there and chat and have coffee and not much else. So Thursday night I did the public show, and I was teaching all day long, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I saw probably close to 150 kids during those 4 days. And then, so word spread very quickly. And that night, that Thursday night show, it was packed, standing room only. And they did a good job of bringing the locals out, and they all loved the show. I got a standing ovation.
Nice.
I'll never forget it. And the next morning I'm at this diner again, Thompson's Diner in Bingham, Maine. And one of the guys sitting at the booth says, "Hey, why don't you come on over and sit down with us?" And I went, "Sure, yeah." He says, "Hey, I saw that show you did last night. I came to the show. My daughter is in the theater, department, and you're working with them on their musical. You're doing something with them." I said, "I think I'm choreographing their opening number, or helping with them, giving them suggestions." And he says, yeah. And he started explaining some of the show to his buddies sitting at the booth, and so I ordered some pancakes, and the waitress came over, and I said, "Do you have any maple syrup?" She says, "Oh, we don't, we're out, but hey, how about this?" And she put down like Aunt Jemima, and I said, that's fine. And so
an insult to Mainers everywhere,
really,
right?
Yeah. So, but hey, I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah.
And so had my breakfast and had a great talk with them, and they were very, very complimentary. And I went back to school there for my last day, and the last period of the day, I was working with the theater department there, the play, and the actors and actresses, and we were working on that wrapping up number, the last number, and the opening number, and then the last number. And so all the parents were coming in when we finished, and this guy comes in that I recognize from the morning. And he says, "Listen," he says, "I want you to know everybody here had a great time, last night at the show, but also my kids are raving about your classes, and my buddy's kids are raving about your classes." And he hands me a paper bag. And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And he leaves the gym, with the stage at the end of the gym. And I'm standing there literally just packing my last bag, and I got this paper bag, and I'm walking out of the gym to my car to drive, 3 hours home. And I said, "What the hell is in this bag?" So I opened it up, and it's his own maple syrup.
Yeah, that he sugars, right?
That he sugars himself. Wow. And it's grade A amber, and, one of the best you can get. So I just remember things like that have happened to me. Performing downtown Portland, one noontime concert, and you're supposed to do about an hour, 12 to 1. And I was outside. It's all silent, and I had this old ratty, professor's. It's almost looks exactly like Professor Rhombus's jacket.
Like a corduroy jacket with patches on the sleeves.
With the little things on the sleeves, the elbow patches. Yeah. And I got this at a Goodwill, and I said, I can do anything with this thing. It's, it cost me like $5. Right. So there was this little puddle in this little path at this little venue that I was performing outside. And as people came down this path, crossing literally right in front of my performing area that I had chosen. And that's the path they usually walk to get across that little park. And so I'd throw my coat down, on a section of the thing, just because, there was a woman and it was a little bit it wasn't wet, but it was, it was kind of damp from the rain the night before. And I'd just throw my jacket. I didn't care about the jacket. And they'd always walk around it. They wouldn't step on the jacket. And the audience watching this was they're going, oh, no one's stepping on that. Right. But I didn't give up. I kept, here it is, 1:15, and nobody stepped on it yet, so I keep throwing it down, and it's 1:00. I'm supposed to stop, and people are supposed to, usually they're going back to work. Right. But nobody left the performance space.
They want to see this.
Yeah. So finally, I think it was about 10 minutes past 1. And, here comes a woman in high heels, and, she's crossing the space. I'd gone a good, 10 minutes without doing this bit because nobody crossed the space. Did you say,
don't worry, it's just a stage you're going through?
Right. Don't worry. So no, I was totally silent, and I saw her coming, and I ran over to where I had stationed my jacket, and I threw it down in front of her. Yeah. And she stopped for a second, and everybody in the whole audience, you could just feel the tension. Please step on the jacket. I want to go back to work. And sure enough, she did. And
round of applause.
She got an incredible amount of applause. And to me, it's, if I can make someone out of the audience, a hero or a star, or even have that moment where they get adulation of some sort or clapping. Right. I just thought, how special is that? Yeah. For me, I don't know. It was kind of like, I want this moment to happen. So I didn't give up at 1:00. Right. I kept going.
Oh, that's so great.
Those are two quick stories that are part of, if I write a book, those will be in there. Yeah. And there's so many of them, so many of these stories. I did recently a performance in Portland at a small little venue, maybe 75 seats, 85 seats. And it was close to full. I think there might have been 5 or 6 seats not taken. It was a late spring, early summer. And, this audience was comprised mostly of adults. And I think there were like 3 or 4 kids in the whole audience. And it was a great show. I had a good time. And when the show was over, this family came up to me, these 2 man and wife, and their 3 kids. And he shook my hand and he said, when I was a kid, my father brought me to see you perform here in the Portland area. And he said, I just wanted to give that same gift to my kids. Wow. And from everything that I saw tonight, they really enjoyed it. And what do you want to say to Mr. Judkins here, to his kids? And they just came up to me and shook my hand and said, we really had a great time. Thank you very much for your performance. Wow. And that just meant so much to me because here he is, how many years later? Right. I don't know, 35 years later. And he's a parent. He's doing exactly what his parents did. And,
well, that just I remember taking my daughter to your house in Maine when we were shooting. I think we were shooting like a comedic introduction to .NET, and you were doing Sunny Day.
Oh, yes.
And I'm sure. Talk about surreal, man. That was just funny. But I remember, my daughters just loved you,
Oh,
it just
that's
had a great time.
Well, you invited me to a .NET event. I don't know if it was in New Orleans. It was a convention.
That's right.
And I was dressed as
Sunny
the
Day,
character from the .NET thing. We had a green screen and everything, and we might have gone on location with lobster buoys in the back.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I think you did a workshop after the conference. Boy,
yeah. And so this guy from China or Japan, could have been Korea, comes up to me and he says, and with like 3 or 4 of his buddies, he had seen the .NET piece, and he looked at me. He says, "Oh, sunny day! Oh, sunny day!" And these people from all over the world were walking up to me, and all of a sudden they're asking me about .NET
right.
and
the funny thing is that you don't know .NET from anything, right? So
I don't know anything.
So
I don't
what
know
was
what's
great
going
is
on.
I gave you a script, and we'll probably link to the video because it's hilarious. I gave you a script, but I left this pause in there that you really didn't know what to do, like, and so you just kind of sat there looking at the camera and like, well, anyway, wicked fast service, and we don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God.
It's just the ability to make up a punchline when you have no idea what you're talking about. It's great.
And I was reminded of that over and over again at this convention, just that all I am is just hired talent.
Yeah, you're playing a part.
To make a point for Carl, but I don't know anything about the technology.
The other one we did, which I was really proud of, was Grampy Day. We did a black and white video of your neighbor playing you, sitting in front of you at the Christmas tree, and you were juggling with your son Kyle.
That's right.
And we were demonstrating asynchronous or multi-threading. Multi-threading.
Right.
And so that I'll put that up there. Even if you don't know anything about computers, I thought it was a great metaphor, and you guys just did a great job. But anyway.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
One more thing. Can you explain or narrate the bean supper gag? Because this, I think, is the one that had me in stitches.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
These 2 guys have a script,
right?
And
there's a director.
Yeah, I was the director, and Barney and Steve were my actors.
Right.
So I gave them a script, and I said, it's just 6 lines, 7 lines.
Right.
I said, just go ahead and read them. And they go, what's in the pot?
Yeah, one's stirring a big pot.
Yeah. He's
pretending.
But even at the very beginning, they're just reading the script.
Yeah.
And, he says, what's in the pot? Beans. Can I have some? Sure. Here. These beans are disgusting, and it'd fall down. And then the other person would say, is there a doctor in the house? And then the doctor would come up, and, the doctor would get a person out of the audience, and that person would have to say, would just prompt him to say woman or man, and they'd say, this man is dead.
Yeah, he'd and that was it. Put his ear to the
put his ear to the thing.
To his chest.
We gave him a stethoscope. Yeah. We got a really nice stethoscope, and they'd put the stethoscope down to his heart, and they'd say,
but the key is when you guys are doing it, you go, doctor, we need a doctor. Can anyone hear a doctor? Can you play a doctor? And you usually get somebody from the back row, right?
Yeah, way back. Yeah. And so we'd say, look, your cue is, is there a doctor in the house? That you stand up and you say, I'm a doctor. And then you run up. So we literally rehearse in front of the audience. Right. And then we say, okay, let's run this. We got a doctor. We got everything we need. And then, so Barney and Steve would end up doing it wrong every time.
Right.
Well,
in some
wrong
way.
In my eyes, as a director, they'd come out and they'd do, they'd do it like real robot-y. Can I have some? Sure. Here. And I'd stop, and they'd say, there's a doctor in the house. Right when the doctor was halfway up, I'd go, cut. That was terrible. You guys
Doctor, you were great. Sit down.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You were great. Sit down. You're doing everything right. And every time I gave them a clue on how to make it better,
right,
they'd take it
over the top
to the nth degree, over the top.
It wasn't enough liveliness. So we need more action. Lively.
Yeah. And so the next take, I'd go, ready, bean supper, take 2. And they'd go, hey, what do you got in the pot? Beans, and they'd go way over the top. And
again,
they'd
wait
say,
till
hey, is there a doctor in the house? The doctor would go all the way up, and I'd go, cut. And I'd just admonish them, just say, you guys, it's too much energy. You gotta really pace it. You've got to get that pacing down. So the next one they go, what's in the pot? Beans. Doctor in the house.
And it cut. And this goes on like 7 times, like too fast, too fast next time.
Too fast, then too slow. And
pot?
Yes. And then finally, the last one, I would spit, beans and spit at each other. And so, and then they'd say, is the piece that really broke us up on stage was when we'd go slow motion, right. And the audience was cracking up, and then it would get all the way to, is there a doctor in the house? And the doctor would, if they were smart,
he
or if they were in the moment, they would go, I'm a doctor, and if they didn't do it, of course the audience was totally hoping that she or he would do it. And when they did it, it slayed the audience, just slayed it. And so they'd walk up, they'd go slow motion up to the stage. And just before they get there, I'd go, cut,
and too slow. But then the last one was, it needs to be more musical. We have to have some music in here, right?
Yeah, rhythm. We call it rhythm. Yeah. You need some rhythm in this. You never tried to give away. You didn't say it's too slow.
Right.
You'd also say, you just say, it needs a certain rhythm.
You give them a way to make it their own.
You'd give them a little thing to chew on, and they'd always just completely fuck it up. So Barney and Steve would go, oh, okay. They'd have a little huddle, and they go, we got it. And then Steve came out and said, he'd
do a little rap or something.
It was all a rap. So what's in the pot? I say, what's in that pot? They said, beans. I got beans. And all of a sudden, and even me as the director with the clipboard and the whistle, and everything, I'd start getting into it. And then we'd just, that was the last piece, the last take rather, of the piece. And we'd get all the way to, is there a doctor? Is there a doctor? Is there a doctor in the house? Oh yeah, is there a doctor? Is there, and we'd just go way over the top. And I was the director, and I'd get into it too. And so, and again, we'd give it right to the doctor, that person out of the audience, to see if they would go, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor in the house.
I'm a doctor.
And then,
he's a doctor.
And they would groove, all the way up to the top of the stage, and they'd get down, put the stethoscope down, and they'd go, this man is dead, and of course the audience is already, slayed, and would give him to take his coat off. He had a little lab coat, his doctor coat, take the stethoscope from him and give him a DVD of the Maine Hysterical Society.
Yeah. And so funny. I mean, I've never cried so much, but because you know what's coming. But watching them go through the motions and, smelling the smoke coming out of their heads. See the wheel spinning. Oh, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Randy, thank you again. This has been great catching up with you, and we'll see you out there.
All right, Carl. Send me a link when you make it.
I certainly will.
When you put this all together.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, my friend.
Bye-bye. You're listening to No Excuse for Boredom from noexcuseforboredom.com and wherever you get your podcasts. All the music you're hearing I've composed and produced myself unless otherwise noted. I'm solely responsible for creating, recording, editing, and producing this content. If you'd like some help getting your podcast sounding this good, drop me a line at carl@franklins.net or on Mastodon at carlfranklin@techhub.social. If you'd prefer not to hear ads, consider buying me a latte once a month via Patreon, and you'll get ad-free episodes delivered right to the palm of your hand. Go to noexcuse.carlfranklin.com to sign up. And hey, don't take any wooden nickels.